Good morning. I am one student. Today we are going to be learning a very famous theorem, something that you guys may have seen before called the Pythagorean theorem. The Pythagorean theorem allows us to use this formula right here, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, to find the side lengths of a right triangle. And that is a key. The triangle has to be a right triangle. It has to have a right angle in it, or else this formula does not work. So the way this formula works is we have a squared, which is one leg, doesn't matter, one leg of the triangle. B squared is the other leg, or the second leg of the triangle. Again, doesn't matter. And c squared, this right here at the end, is our hypotenuse, or what we call the longest leg of our triangle. So it's leg squared, actually let me do it in the right color, leg squared plus leg squared equals hypotenuse squared, or the famous a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So let's see if we can do a couple of these together to figure out side lengths of a right triangle. Now remember, you are going to need your calculator for this. So make sure that you have a calculator handy because we're going to be using squares and square roots. So here I have a 5. Now remember, my 5 is one of my legs. And to put it in the formula, I'm going to say 5. Instead of 5, I'm going to put 5 squared. Plus, and then there's the other leg. There's my b squared. That's be 9 squared is equal to whatever my unknown is. Here it's my hypotenuse. It's going to be y squared. Okay, so now we just start doing the math. What is 5 squared? 5 squared means 5 times 5, which is 25. Plus, what is 9 squared? Well, 9 squared is 9 times 9, which is 81, is equal to y squared. So now we just add these together. It was 25 plus 81 is 106 is y squared. So now that we have this, now what do we do? Well, 106. Okay, now what do we do? Well, I can't have y squared. I just need y. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the square root of both sides. What happens when I take the square root of a square? It just becomes y. And the reason being is that these cancel each other out or become 1. Then what is the square root of 106? Well, you're going to have to hit your second x square key to find that out. So on the calculator, hit second x square and then 106. And that is approximately 10.29, or we'll say 10.3. So that is my answer. Y is equal to 10.3. Now remember that I said that the hypotenuse, this y, is the longest side. This number should always be larger than this leg and this leg. If it is not larger, you may have done something wrong. Okay, let's move on to our next example. Again, we have an unknown here. Our a squared is actually a q. So we're just going to write it, not a g, a q. We're going to make it a q squared plus, well, now I have my other leg, that's a 2 squared, is equal to my hypotenuse, which is 3 squared. All right, so now I've got q squared plus, well, 2 squared is 2 times 2, which is 4, is equal to 3 squared, or 3 times 3, which is 9. So now I'm solving for q. Well, remember, when we're solving for q, I want to move everything over to the right-hand side. So I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides. This goes away. I get q squared is equal to, well, 9 minus 4 is 5. Am I done yet? Nope. The last thing I have to do is take the square root of both sides. Remember, that becomes q is equal to the square root of 5. Again, use your second key, square. And that's going to tell you that the square root of 5 is 2.2. Now notice, 2.2 is smaller than 3. Remember, 3 is our longest side. So That makes sense. That number that you or value you got made sense. If you decided it was q squared is equal to 5, that's not going to work. It has to be less than 3 because 3 is our longest side. All right, so I'm going to do a few more with you just so that you know that you've got this down. Let's change the color just for fun here. Let's do it in green. I think green is good. Okay, so what is my formula for the Pythagorean theorem? A squared plus b squared equals c squared. So instead of an a, I have an 8 squared plus my other leg, which is 6 squared, is equal to, well, they just give me c for my unknown, c squared. Now I have my formula set up. Now I can solve. So I have 64. That's 8 times 8 plus 36. 6 times 6 is equal to c squared. 64 plus 36, what is that? Oh, it's nice. It's 100 is equal to c squared. Now I'm not done yet. I got to take the square root of both sides. This just becomes c because they cancel each other out. The square root of 100 is 10. And does that make sense? Yes, it's the longest side. Okay, let's do a couple more here. We have, and I think these are pretty much similar to our examples, but I'm going to skip down to number 4. Because number 4 looks a little different. Let's look at number 4 here. Look at that. There's that x. Is that a leg? Is that a leg? Is this the longest side? Well, notice that my triangle is just turned around and my 90 degrees, the reason why I can use this triangle is opposite our longest side. So when I set up my equation, this is going to be important. It's going to be x squared because that's one of my legs. Should put it underneath it. X squared plus the other leg, which is 6 squared, is equal to 10 squared. So there's my unknown. That's the side length I want to find. This is known. That's my other leg. And this is the longest side. So be careful how your triangle looks before you solve. So we have x squared plus 6 times 6 is 36 is equal to 10 times 10, or 10 squared is 100. Now I'm just solving for x. I'm going to subtract 36 from both sides. This goes away. X squared is equal to 100 minus 36, which is 64. I take the square root of both sides. X is equal to 8. So my side length for this is 8. And does that make sense? Yes. This is my longest side. It should be less than my longest side. Okay, we're going to skip down to a couple more here. And I think, let's see, we'll do a couple more here. Do the following lengths form a right triangle? So remember to read this carefully. Do the following lengths form a right triangle? So we want to know, this one looks like the right angle, right? So that means this would be my longest side. So does 6 squared plus 8 squared equal 9 squared? Does this make sense? So let's see, 36 plus 64 is equal to 9 times 9 is 81. This is 100 is equal to 81. Does that make sense? No, those don't equal. So is this a right angle? Nope. So this is a no. Not a right triangle. It's kind of cool that we can use the same formula to figure out if it actually is a right triangle or not. Let's do one more. I think if it was a right angle, it would be this one, right? So it would be 5 squared plus 12 squared equals 13 squared. Is this going to make sense? What's 5 times 5? 25. What is 12 times 12? 144. And then what's 13 times 13? Is going to be 169. So when I add these two together, 25 plus 44, oh, that's 169. So this is a right triangle. This would be a yes. So that's how you do these. So you do the rest of those. And then again, the last one just says find each missing length to the nearest tenth. What would be my missing length? Right here. What side is that? Oh, that's my hypotenuse. So this would be my C side. Let's look at this one. There's my legs. There's my hypotenuse. So I'm solving for that C side again, or the hypotenuse side. So that's how you'd find these. Even though they don't give you a letter, you can give them a letter. And make sure you're understanding that the right angle is opposite that longest side. So let's do that first one together. We have 4 squared, there's a leg, plus 8 squared, there's my other leg, is equal to C squared. 16, that's 4 times 4, plus 8 times 8 is 64, is equal to C squared. We add these together, that's going to be 80 is equal to C squared. Remember, I still have to take the square root of both sides. What is C equal? What's the square root of 80? I know it's not going to be, we just have to use our second square. And the square root of 80 is going to be 8.9. And it says round to the nearest tenth. That's the tenth. So we now have 8.9. There's my answer. Okay. I hope you have fun with this. I will be seeing you the next day and we'll go over some of these answers together. Have a good day, guys.